We're going to continue with our work with squares, squaring a number. And what we're going to start thinking about is how square roots and squares are related. The square of a whole number is a perfect square. And I want you to note that this is whole. This means it has no decimals, it has nothing like that. It's your perfect squares. So that means, like number 2 wants us to give some examples of perfect squares. Well, let's try 2 times 2, 4. That's an example. 3 times 3, 9. 4 times 4, 16. 5 times 5, 25. 6 times 6, 36. 7 times 7, 49. 8 times 8, 64. 9 times 9, 81. And 100. That takes you to the perfect squares all the way up to 10 squared. The opposite of squaring a number is finding its square root, which is where it started from. The square root of 4 would be 2. So its root was 2 because it's 2 times 2. The square root symbol is, and you can't type that, but it's a radical sign, symbol. Okay? Look at the squares that you colored in. So look at yesterday's thing, and you're going to try to find each square root. So yesterday's had this box, and it had 2 and 2. So this has an area of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the root, probably use the wrong term, but the square root of 4 comes from the 2's on the side. 2 times 2 equals 4. So therefore, and you don't want to type this, 2 times 2, let's explain. 2 times 2 is the same as that. So that would mean the square root of 4 is 2. Okay, let me write the next one a little different. This will be what you type. What I'm explaining is what you're explaining. So the square root of 9 comes from your box yesterday that had 3 on each corner. So 9 is the same as 3 times 3, or the square root of 3 squared. So that root, the square root and that square of 2, they are inverses. They undo each other. So therefore your answer is 3. 16 came from your box. That was 4 times 4. So I'm going to have the square root of 4 times 4. This is the same. See, this 16 and 4 times 4 is the same. So I'm going to rewrite that as the square root of 4 squared. Well, the root, remember they are inverses of each other. So this part undoes the square root, and you're left with 4. That's your answer. So the square root of 25 came from your box that had 5. That looks awful, but it is what it is. So that means the square root of 25 came from 5 being squared. Well, when we practice our other inverse operations, they erase each other, they undo each other, so therefore you're left with 5. 36 came from your square that came from 6 times 6. So the 36 is 6 squared. Well, those are inverses, so the square root is getting rid of the squaring of the 6, and you're left with just 6. The 49 came from your box that was 7 times 7, so that means this is 7 squared. These two things undo each other. Squaring and taking the square root is inverse, they're opposites, so you're left with 7. So let's go down here, and we've already talked about it a little bit. What is the square root of 100? Well, you know how 100 is made. 100 is, and this is not typed in the box, this is the explanation. The square root of 100 comes from 10 times 10, which is the same as 10 squared. So therefore, if you use the inverse operation and get rid of both of those, remember, you're left with 10. What is the square root of 81? Well, the square root of 81 comes from 9 times 9, and that is the square root of 9 squared. So inverse operations, you get to eliminate or get rid of the square root, radical sign, and the square. So you're left with just 9. To find the area of the square, use the formula A equals S squared. And we're going to find the length of a side of a square with a given area. So I guess we better call this length. A equals length squared. So A equals 400 centimeters squared. How can I solve that? That would mean that I need to take the square root of 400, the square root of 81, the square root of 36. So I'm going to focus on the square root of 400. I know that 2 times 2, but I got 2 zeros. So let's try 20 times 20. That one doesn't come out either. That should be 4,000. Nope, it isn't. You're right. It's 20 times 20. Miss Began did it wrong. Ignore Miss Began. So it's 20 squared. So this would be 20 times 20, which is 20 squared. There you go. And so that gives me this answer. What is the square root of 81? Well, we did that right here. So you should know that answer. This one helps you because it's got a 36, and we found 36 was 6 squared, but we have 2 more zeros, so it'd be 60 squared. So this one is 60. See, I think they've made an error, so ignore this one. 20 times 20 is 2,000, or is 40,000, 4,000. So we're going to eliminate this one because I do not like that error. But the answer to this one is 60. It's a good thing that we're going to be doing several more of these with practice. And you do have a page to practice with. We won't get any that are this high, but I want you guys to do the practice pages that is on the next part of the assignment.